over the place, but we appreciate your focus and time here. We'll be here and talking and taking questions until 4:30 p.m. And so if you do need to leave early, that's okay. Just exit out the door, it's fine. And I'm sure folks will come in as we go. First, we'll start with just a brief introduction to what we're doing through the think tank. I'll have each individual on our expert panel share with you who they are and what organization they represent. And we have a couple of videos to show you, one from our work today already. So to start, and we've shared with you some information in advance of this, but the think tank was an effort by the school and leadership and teaching faculty to help improve and make sense of a variety of competing interests that we have when it comes to learning and teaching in the classroom, in a way in which we can leverage the best ways forward when it comes to a variety of initiatives and efforts that we have that we all believe are critically important, but ultimately very difficult to do without them being really intentionally integrated and thoughtfully delivered. And so we invited 11 tremendously talented experts from around the world to come and help us with this question we're having and give us some thoughts and perspectives. So this group joined a group of faculty, a group of administrators, board members, and high school students to begin a 2-day conversation. And we've just completed day one, a really robust and thoughtful conversation. We're going to share with you, they're going to share actually their impressions of what they heard and learned and listened to today and some ideas and thoughts they have. And then we're going to open it up for you to ask them any specific questions you might have. So I'm going to start with the video first before we do the introductions, just to reframe the kind of critical questions that we're asking of ourselves as a school. This is the video we sent out just a few days ago.
Helping your students. How can I recognize their needs and so they always this potential?
How can I provide them with great
What can and possibilities are there for future learning for schools?
What is it like?
Start by
We need to just plug it in.
where's the actual?
The laptop's here.
Oh, yeah, I think it has to be here. It's too far from the Apple device. That's okay.
In my classroom, I heard that diverse situation.
So while we're getting that ready, we're going to join in. So we'll start to my far right now. Each introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Leanne Young. I'm representing Lead Inclusion, an organization that supports schools in the United States and abroad to meet the needs of a broader group of learners.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Derek Rhodes. I'm the Executive Director for the Association of American Schools in South America, which graded as a driving distinguished member school. And we'll be here in March 2020 to hold our annual conference that we serve the educators that teach your students.
I'm Kevin Mattingly. I represent Teachers College, Columbia University, where I'm a professor of practice. That means that I teach in real schools and coach in real schools, but also teach teachers. And my forte is cognitive science, how kids learn, and try to help teachers understand how that practically applies in their classrooms.
I'm the guy that works at graded.
Hello, my name is Ariel, and I'm a learning experience designer at the D School, which is like the black sheep of Stanford University. And my main job is around helping teachers engage in creative work and be more innovative in their schools, classrooms, and we also look at school systems as well.
Supervisor number 2 microphones. My name is Nick Hayden-Smith. I'm the co-founder and director of the Institute for Social and Emotional Learning. We're an international group of former teachers that work with schools to bring SEL best practices to make schools more caring and inclusive communities.
Hi, I'm Deborah Welch, and I am the CEO of the Academy for International School Heads, which is an organization of international school heads has 500 heads around the world, and I was the facilitator today.
Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Carroll, and I'm with Asia Society's Center for Global Education, and I'm the director of our International Studies Schools Network, which is a group of schools across the United States working to advance the teaching and learning of global competence.
Hi, I'm Michael Akbar, the Executive Director of Global Online Academy. We're a membership organization, which graded as one, of 85 schools around the world working to empower students and educators to thrive in a globally networked society. We do that through courses for students and professional learning for educators.
Good afternoon, I'm Tony Jackson. I'm the Vice President and Director of the Center for Global Education at Asia Society, the organization that Lisa just mentioned. And as she said, our focus is on the skills, knowledge, and dispositions that young people need to thrive within a more interconnected, multicultural world. And so we do a lot of professional development for teachers, school redesign, and other kinds of ways in which we can advance that kind of education in the United States and globally.
Good afternoon, I'm Kylie Adolph. I am the Vice President of Engagement at Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way is an educational nonprofit based in the United States, and Graded is implementing our science, technology, engineering, mathematics programs. So it's been an honor to meet some of you and work with you as well. And I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California in their School of Education.
I'm Vince Bergman, I'm the President and CEO of Project Lead the Way. And as Kylie pointed out, we serve nearly 12,000 schools in the United States focused on STEM education, and particularly engineering, biomedical science, and computer science, full pathways from preschool through grade 12. And as we started thinking about our work outside of the United States, we came to one of the top schools in the world. And that's why we're here. And we're excited about the implementation of Project Lead the Way in grade schools.
All right. Is the video ready or not? No worries. We'll keep going. I'd like to introduce Deb Welch, the facilitator for our time together, to share a little bit about the experience we went through today, to give you some objective lens into our world, and then ideally the video will play that kind of gives a 1-minute highlight of what we experienced. So, Deb.
So the name of the 2 days is, as you know, a think tank, and it's aptly named because these 10 visitors are here to lend their hearts and minds to a couple of framing questions that Graded leadership team developed. So imagine a room, the Innovation Lab, with 30 people, 10 of the visitors who have been asked to come, and the other 20 being students, teachers, and administrators at the school. The idea being that there's reciprocity. It's not just that these 10 folks are going to sit and expound knowledge and say, well, here's what we think schools should do, but rather there's a great deal of dialogue, a lot of give and take, a lot of discussion around very important questions. And I'd like to read those questions to you because they really did frame the work. How might we inspire, empower, and engage our students to ensure that learning is personal, deep, and enduring? And then the teaching side of that being, how can we lead, support, and create an environment where students thrive and teachers transform their learning? So with those 2 questions, we launched into a series of activities today that will continue into tomorrow. And first we had to just get grounded, in a sense. The group was given background information. They were given your strategic plan, your mission, your vision, your core values. They looked at the 3 concentric circles. They had things about your history, all written very skillfully in an abstract that people read beforehand. And the question was put to the group, as you read the background information, what is important for us to remember as we work through the 2 days? And with that, we heard from everyone in the room in terms of here's what we need to understand about this school. A famous person once said, some things work in some places some of the time, right? So, it's not as though any of this is formulaic. You have to take careful consideration into the context and know what it is about this school that is unique and different and should endure. So that then led us to a discussion that where we had an informal panel, and the panel consisted of teachers and students, and they talked about a moment or moments that they remembered in the classroom where learning was personal, deep, and enduring. And we got some incredible stories about what that learning looked like. And we listened for themes or commonalities across the panel members, which were then brought out in scribing on 2 whiteboards with a picture of the student in the center, exactly what people heard. So we heard things like personalized learning, we heard the ability to teach to a curriculum, but also have some agility and flexibility with it. And we heard lots of ideas, and we stood back and read the wall and said, okay, so what's coming out as themes or characteristics for us? That led us into making the most of this group that is here, and we did that in just a strategy known as a double fishbowl, where 5 of them were in a circle and the other 5 were in an outer circle around them. And they responded to the question, what have you been hearing? How might you extend or expand upon that? What exciting possibilities exist that you might want to talk about? And we had a rich, stimulating discussion where everyone else in the room was a listener, and we listened carefully to ideas that this group brought forth. And that led us to an activity that is known as Keep, Drop, and Create. So given these ideas that have come out, what is so important about the instruction, the classroom experience at Graded, that it needs to be kept? What is it needs to be dropped? And dropping could be an attitude, a methodology, something that's standing in the way of as an obstacle. And what needs to be created? All of those were done on Post-it notes, one idea per Post-it, the idea not to reach agreement, but to put all of the Post-its up and to start to see what's emerging, what's evolving, what's the sentiment in the room. As we look at all of the keeps, what are the themes that pop out? And there were about 5 themes, such as keep the strong relationship that teachers have with students, and then lots of ways that that was described on the Post-it notes. What needed to be dropped? What were the things there? What needs to be created? Knowing that as we bring the voices into the room and we talk about it and we explore possibilities, that will lead us tomorrow into thinking about the desirable future for teaching and learning in the classroom experience that addresses the 2 questions.
Thank you, Deb. Very good. So we're going to try the video now, just give you a video look at what you described, if you can see it happening live. just for putting that video together in about 35 minutes. Very impressive. So I'd like to open the panel and with a question, and then feel free, whomever would like to answer it, we can just rotate around there. I guess the question that I would like to start with is, after you've had this experience inside the tank for a day, and you begin to reflect on where Graded's at and what it's trying to accomplish, what are your impressions and what do you think are the implications for us moving forward?
I'll open it up with something that I hope is a simple observation, which is taking aside the programming and the words that were said and all the content, just the makeup of the group to me was a really positive indication. It wasn't the people just who were on the stage. I feel like we participated fully, but oftentimes our participation was in a listening posture. And I was very impressed by not just the dedication, but the depth of thought of all the educators who participated, the board members, and especially the students. I think just the choice to have students participate in something called a think tank is an incredibly good, smart decision. And it shows that in the work that we do ahead, I hope we won't be doing it to people, but with people. And the whole idea of working with the greater community towards a strong, positive direction.
How many of you believe, the microphone is in,
I'll hold it down a little bit, the button.
That's no button?
Yeah, just hold it, it'll turn green.
How's that? How's that? How's that? Great. How many of you think you have a really great school? See, I think that's the greatest challenge and the greatest takeaway for me, is that most people wait to have these kind of conversations when things aren't going well. It takes tremendous leadership and tremendous vision to believe that you're in a really good place and you want to get better because children deserve it. And to bring people together to have these candid conversations and make yourself vulnerable to the possibilities that what you're doing today may have an opportunity to get better is, I believe, a tremendous opportunity that I would encourage all of us to take advantage of. Because not only are you creating something here for the students in schools, you're also creating a model of excellence that a lot of other people can learn from and that can be shared around the world. And so the effects of this work, I think, are well beyond the walls of this school.
Yeah, I can just share my connection with some of the students from today. I think many of us were truly blown away by the student perspectives in our panels and in our discussions today. And in fact, this morning I had a tour from a 6th grade student who, as part of her tour, shared with me that she really feels like Graded is her second home. And I bring that up because throughout our discussions today, this idea of the importance of relationships came up time and time again. In fact, when we did our big brainstorm of words that had come out of sharing and listening to these deep, meaningful learning experiences that people were talking about, relationships were quite often the theme that came up. So my appreciation for that being true for your school is really deep. That's not true everywhere. But also I think in terms of your future work, knowing that if you want to tackle big opportunities and take some risks, you've got the foundation of great relationships upon which to do that. And that will set you in incredibly good stead for what's there.
I just wanted to quickly build on what Vince was saying, where, when you're good and you want to go to great, that's a great indicator. Also, thinking now about an uncertain future and planning now for years down the road, I think is really important for the kids. So I think they're in a good start.
And I'll just build on that and say that we did and will do tomorrow some incredibly hard work in sort of trying to envision what this great school could look like as an even greater school. And that's hard work, but it's also the easiest part of the process, because the really difficult part will be figuring out in a kind of strategic and systematic and ongoing way, how do we get from where we are to where we need to go? And actually, quite honestly, it's going to take your participation both in the thinking, but also in the having folks back in terms of trying to really take some risks potentially and holding them accountable, but also really realizing that change is hard. It's necessary, but it's difficult. And so the road that you're beginning on now is a long one. It's going to have some fits and starts, but it's ultimately the one that you have to go on because it's not only the kids deserve it, but the world has changed. And so if you really want them to be prepared for the way the world is and is going to be, what is great now won't necessarily be the great that's needed for a world that's different in the future.
I was struck by the amount of consistency that there was across all of these people from different places and different roles within the school. What excellent instruction is, what excellent experiences are for kids. And there's a lot of work to be done in determining how, practically speaking, to carve out time. We talked a lot about time. To ensure that we have those excellent experiences crafted for students. But the North Star of student learning, not certain test scores or some of those often external carrots that we seem to go for. The North Star was student learning and student belongingness and relationships. And I was really struck by that consistency.
And I'd like to follow on that. What is really neat about this place in so many ways, well, one is the humility to have people like us come in, who many of us travel the world to look at best practice, the best schools in the world, and certainly in the United States, and to ask us in to not only try to answer what are we doing well, but what can we do better? Where are our benchmarks? Who should we compare ourselves against? How can we get there? And that takes courage too, and that's really neat to see. And also the clear focus of people here on these young people beyond high school, beyond college, right? Who are they going to be? How are they going to be in the world? What habits of mind and heart begin here and with you as parents that we can all together make happen? It's well beyond the college world and all that sort of thing. Mindful of that, of course. But asking that question is a tougher question as a school in terms of those habits of heart and mind. And that's really exciting to see, that kind of focus.
Go to a second question, that is, from your individual perspectives, as you look at the future and an unknown and clearly unpredictable future, what advice do you have for our community and as a whole about what we might be focusing on and what us as an institution should hold true?
Oftentimes we know about schools and hospitals really well because we've all experienced a school and a hospital at some point in our life. And so the challenge that I would offer you as communities, don't expect your children's children to have the same experiences that your grandparents had. Schools have to shift and we have to change. We talk a lot about the 21st century, but actually we've got to begin to think about the 22nd century, because if you have a child that's 5 or under, their children's and grandchildren will be living in the 22nd century. So we have to really be forward thinking. So things may be a little uncomfortable, things that are traditional for us, like how grades happen, how you receive information about what's well, what's good, what's going well. It's not just this concept of a number anymore, to say that a child got a high test score or 92. Because the reality is, it's really hard to assess a child's an 82, a 92, an 86, and 76. And so we create these kind of arbitrary things and come up with these arbitrary numbers, where I think where you are as a school is to get much deeper than that. And I'm really, really excited for the work that you're doing.
I'd love to build on that and actually ask you all to do something really quickly. Take your hands and put your fingers together and hold, interlace your fingers. And I want you to look down and just notice which thumb is on top, your right or your left. And then pull your hands apart and put them back at the opposite. So the other feels weird, right? Like super uncomfortable. You don't like sitting like that. This is a really exciting time in education right now. The conversations are moving really fast about what we know about teaching and learning and how it applies to the classroom. And where our schools end up, it might be different from the way that we've done it for so long. And that different might feel uncomfortable and weird, but that's okay. It's okay that it feels weird. It's not going to feel the same for you as it's going to feel for your students. They're going through and we're preparing them for a different kind of college, a different kind of career, and a different kind of life. And I think for us as educators, we've had to suspend some of those assumptions to do this work with schools. And for you as a community, I think being open to some of these new ideas and new approaches to learning, what's going to happen in our classrooms, it's not going to be unfamiliar to you, but it will be different. And to be okay and hold that strangeness in a good place so that we can think differently about how we're preparing our students for the future and their future. It's really exciting for all of us to lead that work.
I also think it's interesting, we so often talk about students and preparing them for the change and knowing change is inevitable, but I would just also, we talked about this today, embracing that ourselves as practitioners and thinking about, well, how can we model that? How can we embrace change as well and be flexible and be mobile and be agile? All these skills that we're teaching our students, how can we be that as practitioners as well? That uncertainty of the future, we can embrace that and understand that the ways and means in which we teach our children may change and may evolve. So really modeling those habits and dispositions is
I'll offer one fairly specific kind of thing to think about, but even on this panel so far today, we've talked about how we're trying to think about school differently to prepare our kids for the future. And I would offer that we might also think about having kids not learn for the future, but learn by changing the future now. In other words, to think about how kids can actually have a role in making the world different and a better place as they are in their schooling years, and not have it be so it's all preparation for later. Because that learning by doing in that way, I think, is one of the most important ways of learning, but it also teaches kids that they can have a role in life now, and they actually can make a difference in the world in a small way in their community, or maybe in a big way, but having that sense that school and life are not disconnected events, I think is an important thing to kind of bear in mind.
I have an opportunity to work with hundreds of employers around the world, multinational companies. I would say I've never had a company when I've asked them, what are you looking for? And employees tell me they need students who perform better in Algebra 2. Or I wish we had a better AP score for the student. Or SATD. Some of those things matter one time and they'll never matter again. And I think we need to have a long view of education and what our students are learning today. Not think about getting to the next step, but think about what happens for the next 45 years. The skills they need, the things that we need to nurture in our students, help them develop, and how we assess them so they continue to learn, rather than thinking about the single test that we provide. We have to stop averaging students, because I think some of the most detrimental things we've done to students over the last several generations is try to categorize students based on test scores, class rank, GPAs. Those things, again, matter minimally compared to the skills they're developing for the long run. The last thing I'll share is that, and I've heard it 2 or 3 times a day, change is hard. That's because almost all of us overestimate the value of what we have and underestimate the value of what we'll get by giving it up. And we have to be willing to take risk for our students.
A theme that came up today a lot, a couple of things. One was reflection, to be able to pause and reflect on what I'm learning, what I'm seeing, what I'm thinking about, what the other person is thinking about, and creating those spaces in the day, rhythm of a child's life, or a learner's life, or your life, to do that. It's very difficult these days with all those sorts of things. And so I know this school will continue to try to carve those spaces for kids to reflect on their experiences on the learning. Another thing I think we talked about, some degree struggle. That, as a cognitive science person, deep learning that lasts, learning that you use later, is after a struggle, is after confusion. And helping our youngsters understand that struggle is part of learning, and that deep, enduring, and transferable way. And that's something you as a parent can help them. It's okay to struggle, but struggle to a point. And if it's not working, then of course seek help and that kind of stuff. Another thing that's related to that is it was implicit in a lot of what we were talking about, is learning how to learn, learning how to lead my own learning. That there are many skills for the future, but if we fledgling kids out of school, where they understand how they learn best, what are the strategies when I don't know what to do and I don't know what to do. Things like asking good questions, effective questions. Those are things that in the past we haven't taught as much. And I think things like leading your own learning and understanding that my effort, my effective effort, is what ultimately is going to cause high performance as a learner, as a worker, in whatever way it is. And those are changes that I know this school already is doing in many ways and will continue to do. And that's exciting to see also.
I have to tell a personal anecdote here. My daughter graduated from an international school. She graduated with the IB diploma. And she studied economics at university and was hired after she graduated by IBM. She had never had a computer class, ever. She had a rigorous 2-day interview where they put her through scenarios, they did case studies, they had her problem solving, and she was hired. And after the 2 days, she asked them, well, I don't have any computer science background. And they said, we aren't looking for that. We can teach you anything about computer science that you need to know. We were looking for collaboration, we were looking for resiliency, we were looking for problem solving, we were looking for all of those softer skills. That's what we wanted to hire for. And one of the themes that came through today was what you are already doing in that regard. What does the graduate of grade 5, grade 8, grade 12 look like, and where might there be skills such as that are identified as being important? Another thought, and I was using the metaphor in a conversation today about watching or being in a movie. So really that the whole piece around reflection is this think tank is sort of taking a minute to watch the movie, and we never, because we're so busy being in the movie, feel as though we have the luxury to detach and to look and to ask questions and to pause and to ask different questions. So, may we with you do a good job, in a sense, watching the movie and detach and come up with some things that will be very important. A very important step will be when we finish tomorrow. What does that communication and involvement with the community look like? What does that follow through look like?
If I were sitting in the audience and I'm a teacher here, or I have children that attend the school, I might be thinking, okay, this sounds kind of interesting. What does it really mean? What's going to change? So I just want to rest assured that I can let you know that one thing I heard big time was the continuation of positive relationships between students and teachers. I think that came out as a real strength of the school. And so if you're walking away from this today going, okay, what are they going to do to my kids? Rest assured that it's a continuation of making sure that every teacher is really attuned to the individual needs of your students.
So at this point, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. If there are two team members agreed that could help pass the microphone. Thank you. Susan, thank you. Maybe we need to give two. That's right. Yeah, give this. We need some. We need mics up here though, because they have to answer.
Yes, of course.
And please direct your question towards an individual, or if you just want to the panel, that's fine, and whoever would like to.
of course, anybody who's inspired by this, but I was thinking specifically about Dr. Jung and Dr. Mattingly. My name's Phil, and sometimes I teach history. And just before I came here, we were talking about historiography and these waves of interpretations that sort of sweep across history in these schools. And when I first started teaching, the big wave, the thing that we would have been talking about in a think tank was getting screens in front of everyone, moving to one-on-one, and really embracing that. And recently we've seen a little bit of that recede and some fears about going too far, too fast with screens. We still like our screens, but there's some caution about that. And I was wondering from the two of you who have been so involved in teaching teachers, you guys kind of represent the vanguard of another wave of thinking about education. And I was wondering if you thought there was anything that from your position you can see where you see people going too far, you feel people going too far too fast, if there's anything that you see in that regard.
Are you speaking about a particular type of change that we're taking on, or change in general?
I guess you guys have spent time together, and so although you don't all share the exact same philosophy, even just the summaries that you guys gave, you seem to have a similar ethos that you're bringing, and commonality that you guys are sharing. And I think that's a way of thinking and a philosophy of education that emphasizes skills and emphasizes relationships, just to give two examples. So I don't know what historians 50 years from now will call the school of thought that you guys represent, but I was just wondering if from the inside you saw any things where you feel like the wave is breaking too far, or if people are taking the work that you're doing and overextending it in any ways.
I'm not sure about too far, or it would be the right way to speak about difficulty with implementation. Certainly, big changes can be implemented well in ways that stick, in ways that work, in ways that build a culture, and foster teacher leadership, so it's a community creating change, as has been modeled very well today. And sometimes change, sometimes they're the folks that get really excited about a potential initiative. Yay, standards-based grading. Different ways of thinking about assessment and grading is an example of leadership, a change that I sometimes support schools with. And an example of how that can crash and burn is when there's a top-down initiative that's focused on procedures rather than the North Star, rather than the outcome that we want to see. So when schools push forward with initiatives in very top-down ways, and the entire community, including the families, teachers, students, don't have a clear understanding of why we're going where we're going, then we can't co-construct something that works well. So we've seen schools certainly back away from inclusion, back away from standards-based grading, and probably any initiative any of us supports. We have to have an understanding of implementation science and how to do this in a way where we're focused on why and who we're trying to serve, rather than just trying to implement the procedures du jour.
And my answer to the question is yes. This is my 40th year of teaching, so it's on the side. Let me give you a good example. Skills versus content. Well, false dichotomy, right? And now we have what I think is now the 6 C's. Collaboration, it used to be 3, 4, now 6. All skills, all very important skills. But I'm a huge content guy. In fact, I would say that content is more important now than knowledge than it ever was, because there's so much of it out there for these kids. So as a science teacher, I want them to understand the big ideas in my field, right? Here's a quick example. I won't bore you too much. But in the world, there are physical systems and living systems. And sometimes they stay at equilibrium, they stay the same. And sometimes they get moved off of equilibrium, living or fit. Well, that's a huge idea in science. And a good science department will teach that concept in 20 different ways over the course of the science department. That's a big content idea. What are those forces? I think we've swung a little bit to that skill. And let me give you another quick example. Online learning. I'm the author, of a massive online open course for Columbia. And it's called a MOOC, is the acronym. 70,000 teachers have taken this course online from 160 countries around the world, but it's fully online. I'll be the first to admit that is not the best way to learn, okay? But it is an introduction for those teachers. They have to go off and figure it out themselves. Likewise, online learning for children. I know enough as a teacher that at the end of the day, what's going to cause a learner to learn, to be motivated to learn, is my relationship with that child, my presence for that child, my caring about that child, but also my diagnostic abilities to figure out why they're not learning in the moment, and to then develop strategies to help them learn. It's never going to be fully online learning, especially kids who struggle. So, you know, we kind of have this online learning, and it's still there in the States, but I know at the end of the day, a parent, a teacher is going to have to be there for children to learn. So I think I answered your question. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question. Oh, do you want to add things?
Oh, sorry, Michael.
Kevin and I have been having this conversation for about 8 years. As someone who develops fully online classes for high school students, and to address your question, and I'll use that as a vehicle, you know, to your question of what's, you know, a fad and the pendulum swinging. I think it's a great question and is definitely something that we need to keep in mind. And, you know, online is not a pedagogy, right? Online is a platform. The pedagogy within online learning is what matters. And I think that's really where education is right now. We're talking about pedagogy. We're talking about what is great teaching and learning. It doesn't matter where it happens. I mean, we have fully online classes with teachers who care deeply. They write the college recommendation letters for their students in these classes. Like, you don't do that unless you know these students in a deep, meaningful way and care about who they are and who they're becoming as people. They're just not, that's not something that would happen. So, you know, again, right, no, you're right, it's not online, that's not where education is going, but it is part of the circle of the experiences that we should be thinking about, giving students knowing where they're headed after high school. But at the core of all of this is the deliberate pedagogy behind what we're doing. And I don't think that's a fad. And I think for all of us, in everything that we're doing, and I think that's one of the common things that binds us, is that and one of the themes that came up is an intentionality and deliberateness behind everything that we're doing, with relationships at the center of it all. Relationships drive everything. Teachers who care about their kids in the classroom, I don't care where the classroom is, it can be in a classroom, it can be online, right? Those relationships are essential to everything. I don't think that would ever be a fad. And I think even Kevin, you talk about this, we're coming back to the fundamentals, right? Things that we've been talking about, good teaching and learning we're coming back to that. And it's driving all of the work that we're doing and as educators. And that is what, again, feels really exciting for everyone.
Hi, good afternoon. Colette Bonet. I am the Student Services Coordinator here at school and the Dean of Student Life in the lower school. My question is regarding the makeup of our school, and what I was a part of on Saturday was our celebration of the world. What we have here at Graded is a very unique, amazing variety of students from around the world. So my question to anybody is what would you say to a parent or a teacher here as to what we can build, what skills, what ideas do you have that we can build for our students in using their global citizenship as the next step or jumping off block for them as they take this experience here from Graded to the United States or whatever university they go to? What would you say to parents or teachers that we would want to build within them to take that unique experience that they've had here into their future world?
I would say one thing is to use the diversity of your student and family population as a huge asset and to really think about not only sort of having kids understand and appreciate different cultures, but to begin to learn to see the world from a different cultural viewpoint. So how do you have them recognize and weigh perspectives from other parts of the world, other parts of the community? I think that capacity to inculcate different mindsets and ways of thinking about things, not necessarily to accept it blindly, but really to cultivate the critical analysis of what is this person saying, how do I understand this, how do they see the world in their shoes, and what does that make me think about my own way of thinking about things. That's, I think, going to be a really critical aspect of how do you utilize diversity in a really positive way.
I'll try, it's a very hard question, I'll try just to answer a little piece of it. One thing that, one perspective that I appreciate is that diversity is a fact. We often think about diversity as something that we want to get, but in fact the world is diverse. This country is diverse. This school is diverse. And the next circle out is about inclusion. How do we include more people? That's a practice. And what I would hope we develop as a competency is how we achieve more inclusion, either here or in the next sphere out, or in the work that we do once we leave graded and are occupying a global mindset. And one thing that I appreciate about the work that we do from kind of a design thinking perspective, which is what I do in the institute where I work, is a shift from looking at learning as being about problem solving to being first about problem finding. And I think when you pair those two things together, right, practice of inclusion with problem finding, you can create radical change makers. So that would be sort of my aspirational hope.
On the piggyback on that, the design process is starting empathy. And we have diversity on this panel. Although we all speak, as you speak, we understand each other's acronyms, but we have diverse perspectives. And I think to the question about, do we overextend or whatnot, was a beautiful example between online. It's listening to each other's perspectives. It's difference is not good or bad, it's different. And I think it's voice. And so we put students in the center, and when we see students as the power, I heard a phrase recently that said, we don't empower students, students are the power. And as an educator, that completely resonated with me, because every time I saw success in my classroom, it was when I was releasing control and I was really guiding and letting the students struggle and let the students problem solve. So I think our job as educators and parents are to put framing questions. What problems do you want to solve? Why, and how, and what? And as we ask these questions of our students, they really amaze us. And I think the voice of the diversity is beautiful.
Well, great question. I mean, by virtue of having a diverse school, you're building competencies because those opportunities are here. Maybe a question I would ask is, how are we measuring it, celebrating it, honoring it? In addition to some of the traditional measures, the traditional skills and content. But the graduates of your school have a unique skill set. Completing biology is not unique, but some of these skills that they're gaining by virtue of being in a just amazing, diverse, and amazing school, what are those skills that we should be measuring, fostering, and celebrating?
It's too far to get to the microphone.
I remember interviewing for a principalship years ago when I had a school board member ask me about minority students in our school, and her question was, could you share your view of tolerance? And I said, I don't believe in tolerance. And she was kind of stunned. She said, you might elaborate? I said, no. I said, if I say to you, I tolerate you, I don't think it's a very positive comment, but rather it's an acceptance, it's an understanding, an appreciation of other people's views. And the belief I have about diversity is this, and I've seen it in many, many schools around the world, is that putting people from diverse backgrounds doesn't create a diverse culture. It is very intentional. And putting students in positions where they have to understand and start to accept other viewpoints, understand different cultures, people's viewpoints. And it's when you have that kind of, create that kind of culture that inspires our students then to go do other things. And I think it also eliminates a fear. Because many of us fear the unknown. And when we're put in those settings, it is empowering. I think the opportunity you have is that, as Leanne pointed out, you have a diverse setting. How you capitalize on that, take advantage of that, ensure every student takes advantage, I think is very critical. That's by intentional design that happens.
So I come from the States, obviously, and work in a lot of schools that are diverse, but there's problems within that diversity. And so one of the things that would, and different problems, and I'm not saying there's problems here, but it's a different kind of culture. So it makes me think about this, and I just want to bring this out as something for you all to think about, which is that it probably appears as though there's no bias among your teachers for different kinds of students. But you might want to interrogate that just a little bit further, because the notion of implicit bias is a very deep psychological phenomenon. And to assume that it doesn't exist, even in a diverse but relatively high strata here, is, I think, something it might be a bit of a concern if you didn't think about it. Certainly want our teachers, our students to be able to recognize weight perspectives, but what are we asking about our teachers? And are we sure that that kind of understanding and really appreciation from the heart of all kids is there, or are there sometimes things that might be getting in the way? So just something to think about.
Hi, I'm a parent, so I'm going to venture and be the first parent to ask a question. How symmetrical or synergetic do you think this movement is to the college and university realm? Because, I think it's wonderful as a parent. I think there's nothing better than to have your child have his or her skills built and, developed and motivated. But then high school comes and they're worried about getting to college and to see college entrance more and more competitive every year. I look back, I'm so glad that I've already been to college, because I don't think I would be accepted if I applied today. So I wonder how it's hard to think of it as being pessimistic or realistic versus optimistic and utopia. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm happy to start off. Each year I play a fun game of going online and looking at the college application questions to see if there is any change in the type of questions being asked, particularly from the social and emotional learning competencies perspective. And so I collect all the questions that are being related, and I've seen a real change in the last maybe 3 or 4 years looking at applications both in the US and in the UK, where they are asking questions that relate specifically actually to sort of this idea of global competence and diversity, equity, and inclusion. The ability to take another person's perspective and what you've learned from that opportunity is a question that I've seen pretty commonly on application forms. Now, of course, our students can have great answers to that when they've been given that practice reflecting. I think it comes back to some of our earlier conversations that it's one thing to build that awareness of our diversity or of our competencies. It's another thing to really be able to articulate and to talk about them in interview or in writing. And I think that's an opportunity for all our classes to do.
What about the metrics, like SATs and ACTs and GPAs, how will the university, are they following this movement? Are they being partners to this?
If we look to conferences on college admissions officers, yes, there is movement in this direction. It doesn't mean they're no longer looking at those measures. And it relates back to something that Vince said earlier about assessment and these external measures. We have to remember that those measures, the ACTs, SATs, the purpose of those measures is to sort and classify kids. But that should not be the purpose of any of the other assessments that we're using in classrooms on a day-to-day basis. And so we want to set a high bar, and we want as many kids as possible to get there. We don't have to worry about, in the past, it was very much a culture of competition in our schools, where we wanted wanted your student to, your child to be having very high grades and very few other kids having those high grades, so your child was distinguished. And we don't really have to worry about that anymore, because colleges, while they are still asking questions about grades and GPAs, they're interested in a broader profile and an understanding of who your child is and what their strengths are to be able to make a match. So yes, those questions are still there, but there is an emphasis on the true skills and learning.
Well, I was just going to mention I have a freshman in college, so I kind of just went through that whole process. And for sure, we saw a shift in that landscape in terms of what I experienced when I went to school. Probably like you, I probably wouldn't get in today, but she did okay.
I guess I'd answer that in two ways. Parents can help me with this. One of my favorite books is Our Underachieving College. Our Underachieving College, written by Derek Bach. He was talking about Harvard. He was the president of Harvard for 20 years. And it really takes to task schools like Harvard and others. It says it's not that they don't do good things, but there are many great colleges and universities globally that your child could thrive at. And in fact, there's solid research on what college you go to and what metrics you name the metric in terms of happiness or income or whatever it might be. It's a very loose correlation, if at all, right? So helping recalibrate kids' sense of what the appropriate college is. I'm not talking about you, but I sometimes think the college choice is more for the parents and their prestige and who they can talk to. Yeah, I'm not saying that that's really the case, but a little bit, good answer. But one of the best colleges in America is Alverno College. Hear of it? No. A women's college in Chicago, okay? And if you look at some of their metrics in terms of the value added and also where their graduates go, in terms of graduate school, professional school, whatnot, they kill lots of the named schools, okay? And so it's just that you help them recalibrate what the best college is. The second thing is, to follow on the end, college admissions people know it's broken. I taught at Lawrenceville School near Princeton and Riverdale, affiliated with Riverdale School, both sending their kids to these great. We know from what we're hearing from the college counselors, they know they're actually, the college admissions people, they're doing harm to kids, and they don't want that to happen in terms of this competition. So they are seeking other pieces of information about the kids. I mean, they're looking more to e-portfolios. Can we as high schools convey the rich learning and strengths of these kids in ways other than a transcript? And there is a movement in the United States. I mean, the point is, it's shifted in important ways. And that's so hopeful. I've been in these sorts of schools for, like I said, a long time. And I've never seen it shift the way it is right now. Now, if you have a junior, well, who knows in that case, but it is really shifting. So that's so hopeful to see.
Just to speak to that perspective, 3 years ago, we stopped averaging student grades and grading GPA. And we also didn't provide the class ranking, even though the universities, Harvard included, and all of them asked for it. We refused to provide it. And there is no correlation at all that any of those decisions have impacted the placement of our students. And one of the things that we talked about, this was a conversation deeply held during the think tank today, was how can we show our students in a different light, in a better light, more broadly, what they really can do? How do we demonstrate to these universities the depth of character and thought and consideration and thinking that these kids can go through? Thinking of the 4 students who spoke on the think tank panel, if we just recorded what they said and sent it to a university, I can't think of a university that would not admit that child. They were extraordinarily deep and considerate thoughts about what instruction and what learning should look like for them. And it really kind of took us back. That's authentic, that's deep, and that's actually meaningful. Yet we understand there's a test they have to take, and there's an exam they have to score on, and they get sorted, and we know that that's because of a broken system. So we're really investigating deeply, how can we show more than what we're currently showing? And yet not be a guinea pig, right? We don't want to throw the baby out the bathwater and experiment, but we want to push that envelope a little bit. We want colleges to come along with us So we have some outreach work to do and some relationship building further, which is what our college program is doing in connecting with counselors or admissions officers and letting them know who we are and why we're offering the kind of education.
There's a good resource that just came out, I think a few days ago, called Turning the Tide, Part 2. It was a group of college admission deans a few years ago came out with the first one that was talking about student wellness and how they were looking. It was an endorsement of the characteristics of college applicants that they were looking for beyond grades. And the second part really offers some good advice to parents and guardians and schools and students about how to make the college application process a healthy one, and how do you focus on things beyond grades. And I would also add to that, and this is I see the irony already as I'm about to tell you the story. The Dean of Admissions of Stanford is on my board, and in conversations with him, some of the things that he's talked about, he wrote, there's a post of his on our website. But he talked about after certain grades, like, we get it, you're really smart. Now what? Tell us your story. Who are you? And one of the other things he emphasized, I found this particularly interesting, was, a lot of these kids, they go to great schools like Graded, and these schools offer tremendous resources to these kids. Resources that they're going to encounter on campuses like this, wherever it is. I mean, all of these schools, it does not have to be Stanford. How do we know that you can take advantage of those things? How are you, is it just that you're trying to get good grades and just get through that path and graduate with the highest GPA? Or that you're really involved in your own education, that you have a passion, that you are excited about your own learning? Show us and tell us that story. And I think that's really, really important to keep in mind. In addition to the fact that even companies like Google do not find a correlation between students who went to Harvard and Stanford and success in the workplace. Like that, in fact, it's negatively correlated. They don't pursue those students actively as much as they used to. So the story is changing and evolving. We need to be thinking about all of those things.
Final comment on this issue, all the things that have been said. I actually wrote a book on this issue for $24.90. No, I'm kidding. In all seriousness, I will send you a free copy. So I'm not selling a book at all. This is something that's deeply passionate, a passion for me. And I have 4 sons. They've all gone to very different college universities. And, I do believe, one, it is more of parents' aspirations than children's aspirations. And I'll tell you, in the United States, you get beyond the top 25 college universities, it doesn't matter where you are, for the most part. And, there are some market signalers. There are. And some can create advantage. There are. But the college selection process is not that selective. If you look at all the college universities across, if you're only looking at the top 20, it's highly selective. You get beyond that. So looking at what your child needs, where they can get a great education, get the major they need, the major that has opportunity for them. Because I think there's also a lot of worthless college majors. And it sounds harsh, but there are a lot of college majors that the market, there's no demand for it. And I haven't met a parent yet that has said to me that my child went to college, I paid for it, but they don't have a job. And I'm okay with that. For all of us, we want our children to have great lives. We have aspirations for our children for the long run. We want them to have careers and opportunity, families. And I think the decisions we make early on can set the stage for that. But I think we need to really check our own aspirations. And are those aligned with the best interests of our children? But one last comment on this. If I were picking a school for my children to go to, it would be a place like this. A place that, while it's important, the relationships, the continuous improvement, the focus on the whole child, that's the place I want my kids to go. I would not want them to go to a place of all they are is fixated on getting to college. Because your kids are going to get there. And I like the idea of challenging the status quo, challenging these conventions around how we store children. While it may happen in some places, it doesn't have to happen here. And your children can go to places in which people have a different view of what success looks like. And I commend you for taking on that challenge. I think it's one that needs to be pushed hard.
I want to offer a book recommendation, but you're all the way over there.
I'm bringing it to you.
If you're interested in just kind of a fun weekend read on this topic, Excellent Sheep, The Miseducation of the American Elite. Have you read this? Excellent food for thought in thinking about how we measure what we're going for. Valedictorian studies that show valedictorians that have played the game aren't the movers and shakers of the world. It's something deeper, it's something bigger. So,
Can you repeat the name? We have it in the library.
It's in the library. Excellent Sheep, The Miseducation of the American Elite. You'll love it.
Among many others in our great library. Shameless plug. I can imagine we can sit here for another 4 or 5 hours and ask many, many more questions, but we need to be respectful of our panelists' day. They were heavily engaged in conversation, and we have great expectations for them tomorrow. Maybe we can not get to conclusion, so we have to force them to come back, and then we can do this all over again. But I want to say the reason that we invited such a distinguished and diverse group of people to come and challenge us and help us think is that we are in a strong place. We have a tremendously talented faculty, and we have really enthusiastic and curious students. And that partnership and that relationship is what's really at the center of all of this. And so schools, I think Vince said it earlier, can't move and can't create opportunity when they're in crisis. And we have an opportunity right now created, and hopefully we will for the long haul, to really transform, really build, really create something very special and unique. So that students, when they leave us, no matter what age they leave, are forever impacted and forever impact others. And so that's our aspiration, that's our hope that we'll come forward with some solutions over the next day, and then begin to work that with our faculty and our administration and board, and then our parent community, and most importantly, the voice of our students front and center in the conversation. So I really thank you for coming together and listening. I just want one moment before we close. This is recorded, and we will rebroadcast and send it out to all the parent communities. And for those of you and families who couldn't be, or spouses who couldn't be here to hear this, you'll be able to watch it as well. I want to thank our panelists. It's an incredible honor that you all agreed to come. It's humbling to know that you would give up your time and your busy lives and the important work you do to spend time helping us be a better school.